Welcome everyone to the Distilled Spirits Council Ask the Experts webinar series. I'm Amy Carter, the Vice President of Member Services and Business Development here at the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States, also known as DISCUS. Our topic today is how to build a sales process to grow and to get new distribution. And our speaker today is Sid Patel of the Beverage Trade Network. And I will introduce Sid properly after a little bit of housekeeping and after we get let more folks into the call. I want to let everyone know that we are recording this webinar, so it will be available on the Discus events page on our website. It will also be available on the Discus YouTube channel. I also want to remind everybody of the Discus antitrust policy statement, which should be on your screen, but I'm going to read it as well. We should all refrain from discussing or exchanging information relating to pricing, marketing or sales plans, costs or confidential plans regarding output or production, boycotting another company, not recruiting or hiring each other's employees or salaries or wages or benefits, or any other competitively sensitive or proprietary business information. So that said, for those of you who don't know, Discus is the leading voice and advocate not only for our members, but for the distilled spirits industry writ large. We provide a wealth of resources and services, including this webinar series. We also do a lot of work to help educate and share relevant trends, ideas, discussions, opportunities within the industry. Other recent Ask the Expert webinars have included topics like choosing distribution networks. That was with Park Street Imports. The future of barrels with Devil's Cask, which was the 2024 Discus Innovation Award winner. True Essence shared some insights on flavor balancing and some technology that can be used there. We had a webinar on the rise of agave spirits. We've talked about small business grants for export activities, trends in the U.S. liquor market that featured Nielsen IQ. We had some conversations on e-commerce with Reserve Bar and direct-to-consumer e-commerce with Speakeasy, which is now a part of Flaviar. We've talked about global regulatory compliance tips from Trace One, accessing capital and expertise with Pronghorn and other industry experts. We also had some conversations on the alcohol buying trends of the socially conscious consumers, and that was with Women of the Vine and Spirits. So you can tell we have a wide range of operational, consumer insights, economic topics, and so we're thrilled to have today Sid, like I said, who's the CEO of the Beverage Trade Network, and he's going to talk to us about sales and distribution. So welcome, Sid.
Thank you so much, Amy. I appreciate you having me here. So
Fantastic.
hello, folks. Just wondering.
Yeah, can I just one more thing? So just so everyone knows, you and I are going to have a conversation for about 20, 25 minutes or so. We'll take questions throughout. So if participants want to use the raise your hand icon at the top of your screen or put a question in the chat or the Q&A. We'll also save some time at the end in case you didn't get your question asked. And just so everyone knows, contact information for Sid and some important competition dates run by the Beverage Trade Network are included in the slide. So you can contact Sid directly. And then next week, we will send the recording of the webinar to everybody. So with that, Sid, we'll go ahead and get started. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No worries. So just a little bit about myself. So I've built brands. I own private label brands. I also have, a gin brand. I had 10 private label brands that I built to 100,000 cases. So I've done, a lot of brand building myself. I've knocked doors. I ran a wholesale operation in the state of Delaware and New Jersey. So I understand that side of the business. A lot of my family owns liquor stores on East Coast. So I understand how the bottle shop operator works as well. So I've seen the real street, so my experience and my talk is really going to be more from the street. And it is really catered for the small and medium-sized sort of brand that is really looking to grow their distribution, right? So this is not so much for the big brands that are out there already who don't have a new placement problem, but this is really for the brands that are looking to open new states or new importers or really trying to get traction in the current importers, right? So the topic is going to be, how you can open new states and sort of sell more cases in the current distribution partners that you have.
Yeah. So, Sid,
Yep.
Sid, how did you yourself get into the private wine label business?
So I'll keep it very short because of the time. So I started my own brand from Australia about 16, 17 years ago called Friday Monkey. And I was just exporting. I lived in Australia. I went there for college. And that's how I thought, let me just start
Oh,
exporting to Australian wines to my family in the East Coast that have some liquor stores. And then, that hobby part-time little thing became a full-time business. And this is basically the start of the whole journey.
okay,
From that,
fantastic.
I started doing more and more, like expanding in whichever ways, like became a wholesaler, try to own a platform, and then events and trade shows and media assets and whatnot. So basically, that's how it all started.
Got it. Cool. And you are going to tell us a little bit more about Beverage Trade Network along the way, right? And then some of the
Yeah, I
dates you had
will.
some awards. Okay, great.
Absolutely. So Beverage Trade Network is an ecosystem where we help connect, brands with importers and distributors. And a few of the trade shows that we do, one of them is called USA Trade Tasting, that's in Chicago, and one is the International Bulk Wine and Spirit Show, that is in San Francisco. So I can say that for a little later once we have time, but I'm sure they can find it all online. So maybe we can, if we can go to the next slide, or if you want me to try.
Sure. Sure. Why
Perfect,
don't you,
super.
yeah, maybe tell us how your sales plans, like how do you encourage people to plan for sales growth and distribution?
Yep. So I think the first question is, what should be your strategy? Like, how are you planning to expand your new markets? And especially this is the time, right? Like November, December, at the supply side, whatever had to be done is done. Like now, no distributor is going to take new brands, right? So I think this is the time to really plan. This is the time to sort of plan your prospect. This is the time to start sort of building the list. You don't want to email or disturb your importer or distributor because they're busy, but this is the time to plan, right? And this is one of the things that you look at when you plan. So how do you plan? How do you evaluate your strategy? Old markets, old products, right? So this is where you first focus on. That means, let's say if you're selling in 5 states and you have 4 SKUs, you really want to ask that question: that have you penetrated this 4 states? Are your current 4 products very well penetrated? Have you tried your best? That's the first thing that you keep on doing before you move to other things. Then you go to the you know same markets, same customers, new SKUs, right? That should be your plan two to expand. Then comes sort of new neighboring states with old SKUs. So if you are in East Coast, you sort of go central, right? If you are in New Jersey, Delaware, you go New York, and so on, right? So that's how you expand with your current portfolio. And then comes the new markets and new products. So this is a standard strategy that you should really every year think. And only then you aim for a new market if you
Hmm.
really, really thought that you've exhausted your current markets. So to the next one.
So your this is the sales process, right? Okay. I was going to ask about this. Go on.
Yep. So Amy, I think we had this question you asked for me, that how do you define a sales process, right? So in this, what I mean by that is you need to have a discipline of building new distribution. If you don't think like a sales company, like any other sales process, like we all need to understand that when you're making wine or beverage or spirit, we are in the making side, like you're wearing your art hat. But when it's bottled and done, you are a business, you are in sales. If you don't really respect that, like if you don't respect the sales rep and knocking doors and cold calling, it's not really going to work, because you will have to sell this in. And I'm talking about traditional markets, okay? I'm talking about going to the retail, going to the distribution. So you have to really understand the sales culture, and you have to bring that into your company. What I mean by that is, you need to have some process, you need to have measurements, you need to have CRMs, you need to have tools, you need to have a scorecard, like how many new samples are going out and whatnot. So let me go into this sales process. So first step is preparation. Second is prospecting. The third is pitch. Fourth is launch. Fifth is repeat purchase order and depletion rate. So let's go on the next slide. I think I have a breakdown on this. By preparation, what I mean is, are you really ready for new states or the traditional distribution or even the import model if you're aiming for a different country? Can we have a new slide? Okay, so these are the questions. I think, you can send them the slides if
Yes, we'll
there
send
is a
slides
possibility.
afterwards.
But these are some real checkpoints. Okay, so I'll just read out a few here. Like, am I willing to support my distributor? Do I have a marketing strategy? Is I'll read a couple of important ones. Let's say, I understand I have to get new accounts for my distributor. I understand I have to get floor displays for my distributor, right? So, I mean, we all understand that these days we are doing the selling. So, yes, Amy?
Yeah, I was gonna say, because when you say the one bullet was I'm willing to support the distributor with time, money, and product. I think that's very interesting. And then when you go into like, do you have floor displays? Because I think sometimes I hear from members and others, you know, they may be thinking the distributor is going to do more legwork
Mhm.
than they thought. So it's very I appreciate the fact that you included the point about specifics like displays, or do you actually have displays that you can send to your distributor? Are there other sort of specific, I don't know, ways that you suggest that suppliers or producers think of to can support their
So, yeah,
distributors?
I think, I mean, the reality of this, I'm sure many of them know by now, is that distributors are more like a partners, more like a logistical and warehouse partners these days. At least till you have consumer traction. So till you have a pool, till you have a repeat purchase order rate throughs, then you will get some traction. But at least till the brand building phase is there, you as a supplier will have to do a lot of work. So what my point is, you got to understand the two realities of our industry. If you sell your stuff, you get paid. That is the reality. You're not, you may get lucky, you'll get a check first time, but if your product is sitting in the warehouse or the retailer's inventory, no one's getting paid. So that's first. Second is, if you don't go out and sell your product, no one else will. So they will take it Monday, one fine Monday, that whole team will take it, but that's it, you're done. You're sitting there. You will not get a second chance. So that those are the things that you got to understand, and then you got to play the whole game based on the current landscape that we have. So one of the things that I truly advise is add more margins, because you will need that to play this support game to really work the market off. So back to the preparation. Like, you need to understand that you really ready for the reality, meaning you got to knock the doors, you got to help them. You are more of a partner for the distributor.
So it's not enough just to make a good tasting product because everybody's got the best tasting product. I just want to pause. Can everybody see the slides? I know we've got one person in the chat that cannot see the slides. So if anybody else is having trouble seeing the slides, let us know. And then maybe one of my colleagues will reach out to Tiffany, you directly. Okay, it looks like um, Caleb and Louise on my team. Looks like there's a few people who can't see the slides. So if you can contact them directly and maybe help them, that'd be great. All right, so keep
So,
going.
so can some see? At least raise your hand if you can see, so we know at least some can see.
Somebody had to leave and rejoin to see the slides.
Okay.
So maybe Rebecca, Karen, try rejoining, leaving and trying. Yeah, because
I can
John
see
can see
fine.
them
All right,
fine. Yeah,
Johnson. Yep, yep.
some can, some can't. So whoever can't see the slides, sorry, please try and exit and then rejoin.
Cool. Uh, so let's go on the next slide. So this is a more of a self-talk that you need to do, and then you need to really understand that you'll have to put a lot of effort, keep the margins, and then try to work alongside with the distributor to build your brand. You know, and take it in a graceful way, that this is a reality and this is how it is. Because if you don't, someone else, some other supplier is really going in with this mindset. uh, Preparation also comes in the sales materials, right? So in point of sale, are you an educated supplier? What distributors or importers really want is, they want to save time. You are selling convenience, you are selling time, and you are selling an education. Are you an educated supplier, basically, right? So when you have this chance to meet them, they should understand that you are dealing with an educated supplier, and that's what I mean by here. So you need to have, when you're tasting and talking about your amazing winemaking, after that, you're going to lay out all your point of sale material and walk them through this. That, okay, I have a convenience store plan, I have a bar plan, I have, you got to show them the merchandising element, the point of sale element in that as well. Amy, have you got any question there?
No questions, but I love the fact that you are offering specific tips. That's super helpful.
Great. So I think these are some checkpoints. Again, they can see the presentation. They should have this all ready. And it's so amazing. Like, I did that. So once an inquiry comes from a distributor, you send your brief little small thing about your wine, but then you show them that this is our support deck. This is our point of sale deck. This is our chain programming deck. This is how I'm going to do market work. So that's what they will love. When they see that a 360-degree view that you are, wow, an educated supplier and you're going to help them make money, then they start talking.
You want to make it easy for them to help you.
We'll go to the next one. Again, market preparation. This all comes down to the preparation. So this is by understanding the market, your customer, your retailer, your restaurant. Like, if you are having a decline of, let's say, Australian wine or spirits, we'll talk here. Let's say a gin is super slow, and especially in your market and in that account or in that distributor, if their entire gin portfolio is moving down, and then you again come with the bravado of like gin, it's not going to work, right? So you got to understand and see which distributor's gin portfolio is booming or which market it is booming, and maybe align your efforts there. But don't really go against the market. Understand the market, understand your competitive landscape. So if I'm picking again wine example because that's where I remember my selling days. So if my Yellowtail was $7.99 and if my wine was $7.99 as well, and it's exactly the value wine range, I cannot go with $11.99 and try to win that account. It's just not going to be possible. If the whole, like if New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc surrounds around 15 USD, you got to play in that space, right? Like a lot of categories in spirits, especially, have a price range you got to play with. Unless there is something very different, and unless you don't have, unless it's a limited case problem that you have, you don't have to worry about. But I'm assuming that here, we are all aiming for a big brand, a national brand model here. So I think understanding where you position your brand is important. Deals and programming, this is super important. People don't understand or pay attention or don't even know that, okay, write down your 5 competitors, right? Who are you aiming to take the shelf space or floor display? Do you know their deals, what they're offering to the retail or to the distributor? Do you even know what they're offering to their sales? So do you know the sales rep pitch of your competitor? So you should know that, because you will have to offer them, because it's an end game. So meaning, yes, amazing liquid, superb, but here's more 5% for you, Mr. Retailer, right? So that's something which you need to understand. Do you know your end consumer persona? Because when you really need to know who your distributor's distributor is, who your distributor's customer, which is bar, let's say, bar's consumer are. So you need to understand and write that all in your sort of preparation doc, and then lay out, which will come to the strategy of distributors later on. So let's go to the next slide.
Well, before we do that, I just want to say to everyone, in terms of, knowing what, if you're a Discus member, there we have resources on, we have consumption by state and by spirit category. So that can help you as you think of where to expand or where you should be or what have you. So if you don't know how to access that information, if you're a Discus member, email us at membership@distilledspirits.org and we'll help you get access to that. Because you're providing very specific tips, practical information, which is very, very helpful. And so now you're going to talk to us about distributors, because I remember everyone always wants to know. There's always lots of questions on it. How do I find a good distributor? What do I do if that things aren't working out that distributor? So yeah, I'm looking forward to.
Yep, I'm happy to take. I'm happy to take questions once we have time, like real practical questions, brand case as well. So let's go on how to identify potential good distributor partners, right? We'll go to the next slide, please.
There is another question. How does this model change for small batch craft distribution as opposed to broad distribution?
Yeah, I mean, we'll come to that if you want later, but I mean, to answer your case, let's say, so for you, obviously it's the cellar door sales, or it's the distillery sales of D2C and the nearby states. You got to focus on that. It comes down to my first slide, like close by markets, your current depletion rates, and I think that's the model which you'll have to sort of focus on, like your nearby states, instead of selling a pallet here and there in few states. But I can think properly later on that and come back to that. let's say on the current, the question here was, what do you look for, or how do you identify the distributors, right? So here's the checklist again. It's very important to identify a distributor because you're going to use that in your pitch. When you're sending your first email or cold call or even a cold email, you have to create that context, right? So how do you create your context if you've done your research and if you're so confident that you are going to add value to that distributor? So let's go on some examples here, like current gap in your portfolio, a perfect example. So for example, let's say if you are a small batch, bourbon, I think I remember maybe a question was, let's say, and the distributor just doesn't have a small batch and have a volume play, right? So for sure, hey, I saw that you don't have a small batch bourbon, absolutely, I can add value here, and I'll come to the market and all that stuff. Then you add, but at least you are filling a gap in that distributor. And the second thing is, focus week. So later on, once you get distributors a little bit of interest, you can ask them, hey, John, can you tell me how many weeks my brand is going to get a focus on? Like, can I get 4 Mondays that your team will take my brand? It's very important to set that expectation, and then I'll come, in all the weeks that your sales reps are carrying my brand and knock the doors as well with them, and so on, right? So you bundle up your market work and take some pre-commitment of your distributor showing your brand, and so on, right? Then comes minimum sales assurance.
Can you ask? Can you ask for specific weeks or specific days? Can you ask the distributor for that and see what they say, or?
You don't ask, you ask in this way. For example, let's say if I was just selling and we were talking about, hey, Amy, great, glad that you love my wine. I just wanted to plan, how much do you need me for your market? I'm available. You tell me, I'll come and sell the stuff. I'll train your guys. I just want to know what is a good, what are the dates, what works for you? Do you want me 2 times a year, 1 time a year, 4 times a year? I just want to make sure that I'm available. I'm just putting it out there. So you can ask in a different way, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and then you can say that, and then once they say, okay, come sit, and obviously if you're calling me, I'm going to say, hey, give me your PO, and I want 4 reps to take my brand as well with me, right?
Okay.
Then chain authorizations, and so these are the things that you look for. Now, a couple of examples, like if your distributors are pre-authorized in chains, that's a good thing. Are they good payer? Number of sales reps. Do they have an actual warehouse? I used to do Google Earth as well, and actually there are a lot of LLCs and importers that run through home operating LLCs, right? Especially if you're a small batch distiller trying to sell to a small distributor, you can easily do homework and figure out if they really have trucks, sales reps, and the physical warehouse. So at least those are the minimum things that you need to check. Then I used to also send them, scare them a little bit by sending them a personal guarantee or a contract. Half of them will just shy away or not. You will not hear from them. This is, let them come back to you and say, hey, I don't sign personal guarantees. It's okay. Then you say, all right, no problem. But you will be amazed at how many people run away and don't reply back, once you send them a contract or something like that. Yeah, Amy, you have a question?
Yeah, there are a couple questions in the Q&A from everybody. So one, I think, relates to what you just said in a way. Someone says, we have heard and we have witnessed that wholesalers and retailers are up to their eyeballs with inventory, and most are saying we can't take new brands, etc. How do you challenge that? And then after you answer that question, I've got 2 more questions in the chat.
Yep. I mean, this will just take time. I can answer you. So let's say we're talking about retail now, right? When you go into or wholesale, like there is a supply demand overall. Exactly, right? So the honest and the real answer is, you will have to tell them, you will have to give them the pre orders, you will have to get their attention by selling stuff for them, handing them some orders, getting some traction in the market. So for example, what I would do is I will tell them that I completely understand that, you're not looking for new products because you have so many and you're just not buying anymore, or the budgets are not there and whatnot. Here's what we can do if you really, if you give me a chance. So how about I come to the market, I get some pre-orders, I knock doors, and if I have 10 retail accounts interested in my products or ready to, give me a chance, I'll get that pre-orders from that retail account. Would you then carry my brand? Right? No, less people will say no. If you really hand them orders, it's very hard for a distributor to see your effort and say that no, you know.
It's kind of
So I mean,
it's proving that your product can move, proving that you can sell.
100%.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, why don't you go and sell first of all? You know, and it's important. It's good to sell because you will know your actual FAQs. You'll know your objections. You'll know a lot of stuff. You know, so I think that is the ultimate sort of objection. That here, let me come do some initial thing. Here's 30 cases from this 10 accounts. Give me your pallet order. I'll come again, do the market work, and that's how you get the ball rolling.
Okay. Two more questions before you move on,
Yeah,
Sid.
tell me.
One person says, excellent presentation. Thank you. Have you had a situation where you walked away from a sale or a deal because they were asking too much or offering too little?
Yes, so I've learned the hard way. I've lost a lot of money. So then I realized in my fourth year, fifth year, I started sending them personal guarantees, and I started saying no. So if you don't meet this whole myth of let me break even on the first order, let me give the floor displays of 25Ks, let me get the placement and let them, let me raise the margins later on, or whatever that is, it never comes. So make sure that you make money in your first order itself. That's the number one rule. Even if you're working at 40% margins or 30% margins, at least 15 to 20% net you should have. Otherwise, say no. There is nothing. Retailers and sommeliers and bartenders are really not loyal in that way. Like, they have to serve a business need. So if some other better business opportunity comes, unfortunately they have to move ahead with other supplier. So I think the answer is say no. It's okay. Move on and knock the next door.
So last question in the chat before I let you go on. What category is easier to launch? Seems there is too much of everything out there. Which I think is kind of a
Yeah, I mean,
challenging question, but go ahead.
I think, as the old saying goes, like, don't have headwinds, have tailwinds. So if I was to launch anything, I would see where the market's going. I think luckily US is still strong. So let's say the consumer is still strong. Premium sector is still not that weak. So the obvious non-alcoholic tequila and mezcal is still moving around. So I would play around in that. I would look at data. So I would look at Nielsen, I would look at Discuss, I would look at the data, I would look at the channels, I would look at the consumer, I would look at the price, I would look at, and then I would find a product, and then, the whole packaging and all that stuff. So I
Yeah.
would, my answer to that question is I would not go against the market. It's very hard.
Okay, great. So that's all the questions in the chat so far. So we'll let you move on.
Sure. So I think basically once you identify all these things, some things are for you to use it in your sales when you're pitching to the distributor, and some things are for you yourself to understand that you won't waste your energy in pitching this distributor, like credit rating, good payer, and all that basic stuff, reputation at retail level. I used to ask, like, I mean, these are some basic old school simple ways to do credit check. Okay, look at their portfolio, see the other spirits that they sell, some other whiskey brand, email or call that whiskey brand. Hey, John, I'm also selling to this distributor. How are they? Are they good payer? Are they selling good? How are they? Just tell me 2 minutes on that. You will be amazed, like, how, it's not like your competitor doesn't care. In fact, it's good that you both are now aligned with that payer. So you will get some good, feedback, basically. So, use all that stuff, and then sort of then send the samples. Don't waste your samples and go into that other, prospecting phase. So let's go to the next slide.
Keep going. The question's there, so I don't need to read it. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So just for the people who may not, I guess,
Oh, that's true.
see, but let's say what to include in your distributor's pitch. Okay, so this is where sort of the rubber, I guess, what's that? Rubber meets the road,
Rubber
right?
meets the road, yes.
Yeah, let's go to the next one. So this is where, a lot of wineries or distilleries get it wrong, where they really go heavy on the quality, the making, the story, the romantic side of the business. It's great. It's very nice, but 60% make it the business case instead of that how amazing the juice is. So this is the business case now, right? So what is your profit story? Which means the markups. Why their customers will buy, why you will be sort of the top second best selling spirit in their portfolio, and so on. You know, so when I used to sell, I used to challenge them that give me a chance in your portfolio, and I'll be the number 2 selling SKU in your book. For Australian category, let's say. If I was pitching Chilean, my private label, I used to aim for the number 2 at least. And that and in sheer effort, I used to aim that because you want to be a priority to a distributor. For those who understand, I'm sure will understand. If you are not a priority to your customer, you lose out as well. So how do you become a priority is by making the money and by being in the top 3. So, coming back to this, you have to offer convenience, which means, let's say if you are, you got to understand where they deal that pickups, where they store, like Western Carriers in, let's say New Jersey is a big warehouse where many small distributors pick up their stuff, right? So you go and store there. So when you're pitching to New York, New Jersey wholesalers, and you offer Western Carrier as your pickup location, that makes a lot of sense instead of some mom and pop warehouse somewhere, right? So you got to understand where every day their distributor's truck is going. So that it's so easy for them to add a layer or a pallet or something like that in their truck.
So it's basically make a good product, know your origin, have a good origin story, but also know the market is essentially, and have your profit story and all that. Because I think you're right. I think that's the piece that people don't necessarily focus on.
Basically selling the convenience. Like I was a wholesaler, as I said, like you have no idea, like a small wholesaler, if someone took care of their trucking, if someone sent them an amazing packaged cases, if someone did the sales for them, if someone came and motivated their sales tips, those are the things which a small distributor owner looks for from the supplier. If someone handled their truck and shipping and paid them because I want that cash flow, not to use it in the truck, those kind of things, right? So I think logistics, who's paying? So they rather have the CIF, their warehouse price, instead of X distillery price, for example. So make it convenient for them. And then the last thing is recording. I'm just reading. Likeable supplier. Okay, so when they call you, when they speak with you, or when they have a FaceTime with you, or when they meet you, did you increase your likability? Did they like you? Right. So obviously you got to be not a jerk, and you got to not be pushy, and those kind of things fall into that. You got to be empathetic. It comes down to really not being greedy, genuinely showing them that you are a true partner coming on board. So let's go to the next slide. Same things, like these are small things, but very important. Pallet configuration. Like if you come up with your pallet of some funny number, like 42 cases, with some smart guy coming with 56 cases, a nice layer, 5 layer, 60 case, whatever, 60 case, a stack with 15 each, a standard size bottle, that supplier is going to get really a tick box instead of some weird size, a pallet configuration, right? So those kind of things are very important in making a case out there. And then there are, many different things I can go through, but I'm sure the slides are there.
Yeah. So how do you identify a good possible distributor?
So we saw that in the previous slide, how do you identify a good distributor? And this was what do you include in your pitch deck? So you got to include all these things when you're pitching, so that they know that you are an educated supplier, and they can see all other things like your pallet configuration, case support. So these are the things that you include in your presentation. Cool. We can go to the next slide. Okay. So I'll read this out. Why brands need to select distribution networks, right? So what I mean by this is a little growth hack here. So I always played in distribution networks, right? You choose a network, you penetrate, you build relationships. Now you can either choose a Budweiser networks if you are, selling your spirits in, let's say, the beer wholesalers, and in that also you take the Anheuser, network. Then you stick with that, and then once you build a rapport, it's so easy for asking referrals. You will be amazed by how amazing this beer distributors or spirits distributors or this network plays happen. So once, let's say, Amy, you are a Budweiser wholesaler in Texas, and that's where I would go first for Budweiser, right? So I would win Texas. I'll win you because you're the biggest influencer. You're Budweiser in Texas, and then I'm going to ask you, hey, can you refer me? I've proven that my brand sells in your house. And then you will be, like, it's so traditional and amazing, this guy's work. Like, you will do a Zoom call with 40 different Budweiser distributors, or you will arrange a meeting and call all your regional guys, and you will become a little hub, and they all will pick the product. So what happens in the network is these guys think very differently. They think that if we are building a brand, let's build it together. So that's how, imagine one Southern, but now you're building using a network. So all independent owners are truly putting a force behind your brand, but you're playing in the network, right? So this is an idea behind choosing sort of a network. Initially, you may not have the bandwidth to go into the bigger houses, but you start with small independent, and then you start playing. You move, you give some goodwill, and then you keep on moving the ladder as you keep growing your brand.
So I have a question. What if your relationship with the distributor you have is not great, and you've done everything that you need to do, you've been a good partner, you provided the materials, et cetera, and it's still not working out? How can you get out gracefully and
Yep.
move
I
to
mean, we
somebody
all have
else?
we all have that. So you don't want to waste time. You're going to move on, and you're going to move on in a good way, right? So it all comes down to the contract. So you need to have a minimum. You need to put everything in contract. So let's say you had a contract of 500 cases a year, and that distributor did not sell, and it's just 200 cases, right? So you go out and you reach out to them, and in a nice way you say, hey John, we discussed this and it's not working out. My ambitions and my effort are really high, and you saw all the things that I promised I did. you know uh, I want to end this nicely, so I'm happy to buy back your unsold inventory. Give me a release letter, and thank you very much. Let's say an easy way. But a hard way would be, no, you're stuck with me now. See you in the court, for example. The hard way, right? Then you figure out, then you go the hard way, which is, you see how you can play with the parallel distributor. Maybe you've not assigned the territory of some of the distributors in some states, and you open. That's why when you design a contract, you got to have it in a way that you I'm going deeper here because it will add value to the people. So let's say if you are selling to a distributor in the state of Illinois. Now, if that footprint is just around Chicago area, you shouldn't add entire Illinois in the contract, that you have rights
Yeah.
for selling to the entire Illinois. So that's why you ask the question that which are the territories you want me to include, John, for you. That's it. And then you just include that. You ask them where do you service, where are your accounts. You don't, like, if you're selling to an importer and the importer is just selling in 4 states, you don't give them the entire US, right? So it's like that.
So is there a one-stop place where you can find a list of distributors, wholesalers, sort of in that are in one state? I don't think
I
we
mean,
have that list.
we
That was a
have,
question in the chat.
TTB has it. TTB has it. I'm sure some of you
Okay.
may know, but there's a nice hack one can do. Uh, all the licenses are listed by state, by the company type, are on TTB's website, but they are just names. So it will say Amy Carter Wine Importer LLC. It will say Sid Patel LLC, something like that, right? Yeah, states also have it, ABC licenses. So you can go through that, but it's just the name and the license number. So it's information is out there. But then you'll have to dig deeper into it. There is just name and
Okay.
the license number.
Okay. We'll also go back and check. I'll ask I'm gonna ask someone on my team to connect with we have some uh colleagues at Discus who have expertise in various areas, and see if they have any ideas. And if they do, we'll send that in an email to all the participants. But so we talked about wholesalers and retail. What about retailers? How do you get
What is the
into
question for the retailer?
like, yeah, how can you get into retailers, key retailers, and how when working with them helps you?
Yeah, we'll go to the
Helps
next
in
slide.
sales.
So again, here, when it goes back to having your own feet on the ground, building your own relationships. What I did was I had the retail play as well. What I mean by that is you got to have, let's say, 5 or 6 different retail type of accounts. In that, I'm taking an example of a state. So let's say in this, I'll take an example of New Jersey and Delaware, for example, right? So Frank's Wine was a very high-end retailer in the state of Delaware, whose newsletter was really known and who sends a newsletter to very wealthy and private clients, right? So if I make that in that list, that means that my wine is premium. Now for a $7.99 dollar wine, it was a different angle that I was using, which means, hey, Frank's also has my wine featured, right? So that whole quality objection goes away. So if you're selling a Majorska vodka or like 1459 vodka, and you want to go, show as a quality, you have a quality retailer, you have a quality retailer behind you, and you use that as a case study for your evergreen quality objections, right? So that's how you use that. Binny's, for example, or let's say Total Wine. So Total Wine's Winery Direct program or Distillery Direct program, which I'm sure many of you may know, but I'll tell you in what I had with them at that time, which was very simple deal that they asked me that, Sid, I got to sell the lowest in the state and I got to make the highest in the state. Make that happen. So yeah, it's a nice little thing, which means if everyone's selling at $7.99, I will sell at $6.99, but I have to make more money than everyone else. Okay.
Ah,
So so I said, okay, for example, but I know the volume that they were doing, 40 cases a week, like crazy volume between just two stores, floor displays of 50, and crazy volume. So what I was doing there was putting liquid in consumers' mouth. So it was, imagine that I'm doing a store tasting, but now Total Wine is doing for me. Like more and more, people are tasting my product. So you got to use some retailers, build massive displays, who are just putting, the juice out there, right? So that was the play there. Now let's say Burke Beverage is a classic example, which I just told you about the beer network, where he was the one who I proved in Illinois, and then the entire Coors Miller network stocked my wine. Like we're talking about 40 distributors selling like almost 20 containers a year. Cipriani Wall Street, another last example I'll give you. The best high-end Wall Street restaurant, right? Now my magnum of whatever $12 was a house pour there. So again, my introduction pitch to the retailer was like this: hey, sommelier, I'm Sid from Friday Monkey Wines. Cipriani Wall Street has my wine. Boom, right? So use it in your pitch as well. So if have 3 or 4 godfathers of that state and use it in your pitch and use it as a case study. So that's what I meant by having key retail placements. And
okay.
Even if it's break even in this case, you use it well.
There's a question in the chat about how do you approach ABC stores? I know it's tricky, right? Is it the same thing,
ABC
or
meaning the mom and pop or the ABC chain?
no, the alcohol beverage control stores in certain states that could, the state controls the sale of.
Yeah, I mean all this has a long answers, but we have to look at each state. Now, for example, LCBO, let's say, is an example, right? So in LCBO, you go to the brokers is one thing which many of us don't know, but brokers play a big important role. I got into Kroger's with the help of brokers. I got into LCBO with the help of brokers, right? So there are people who do business with people who they are used to, especially if there is like a gatekeeper in the middle, like if you just cannot get access, brokers or this people, let's say, can get you the access, and I'll leave that off the recording, but then you got to play the game that brokers tell you to play.
Well, I'm going to ask you this then, because this is similar to the earlier question. Is there a website or somewhere where there's a list of brokers by state, or does each state have, or does the ABC store list various alcohol beverage control?
No, I don't think so, because they are sort of they're unlicensed sort of people. They're
okay.
like sales agents, and then there are official representative distributors as well. Like let's say in Pennsylvania, the importers and distributors can sell to the restaurants, and then for the PLCB, they got to go through the tendering process, right? So you start with selling them in the on-premise accounts, and then you tell them when the opportunity comes to do a combined pitch for the PLCB, for example. I mean, it's a very long answer to some of your questions, unfortunately. Yeah.
It might be a topic for a future webinar.
But I'm happy to, people can email me, Amy, if they want, and I'm happy to send them some, reply by email as well.
Yeah, we'll include Sid's email. Everyone will get a copy of everyone will get a copy of this presentation, the recording, and Sid's email will be included in both as well. Maybe this is a topic for a future webinar in 2025, maybe getting some of the control states, maybe to do a webinar to talk to
Let's
folks.
go on the next one here. I don't know what's next. Okay, so final metrics here, Amy,
Yeah.
just to summarize the things for the sales process, right? So, I'll go back to what I said. You need to be disciplined to measure your own efforts, and you need to have a pipeline for ongoing, sales. So what I mean by here, coming back to our distribution, objective here. So let's say you want to open, 2 new distributors a month. So in that, what you need to do, you need to send 8 samples a month. For that, what you need to do, you need to make 16 presentations a week. You need to do whatever, like 20 yeses a month. And so, whatever that thing is. So you need to reverse engineer this, and you need to have a board and really start, adhering to that and start updating that board in a very like a boiler room way, and then only you will really, be able to open, because once that 16 samples are out there, then you can pick up the phone and say, hey, John, how did you go? Did you like my spirits or wine and this and that? And then you're going to start closing.
Okay. So the idea is then send samples with the sort of your email or your letter or some sort of information about your product and yourself, send the sample to the distributor, and then follow up with them either in person, go to the store or whatever. Is that kind of the idea there?
The if you can see here in the slide, the idea is preparation. Then there's a
Okay.
prospect, which is list building. You
Oh, yeah.
properly
Mhm.
email the person, or cold call the person, and then the pitch, which we discussed, what you're going to speak, how you're going to pitch, how you're going to create context, how you're going to create the value proposition, a business case. Then once you get a yes, a contractual phase and other things, the launch week comes, then comes the repeat purchase order. So that's the process that you need to keep on doing, depending on what phase the distributor is in.
Awesome. That's great. I will say this, that as my team knows here at Discus, I'm obsessive about the CRM because it's just a really great way to just know your connections. And in next week, unless we can get it out this week, for Discus members, we actually are rolling out a discount with NetSuite, Oracle's NetSuite. So if you're a Discus member, you'll see that email. So just be on the lookout for it. There is a question in the chat. The final
Yep.
metrics on sales process slide, is this expectation per salesperson? Or is it overall for your overall sales strategy?
This is based on your ambition. So this is based on 2 deals. For example, if you want to close 2 state, 1 purchase order, because maybe half will, not close into the purchase order. So this is based on a company, let's say, and so let's do the math here. So let's say if a 1 purchase order is 2 pallets, and if you're making $20,000 on those 2 pallets, and then you can afford 1 rep, then yes, it's for 1 rep, right? So yeah, you got to do the math accordingly. So if you're having a full-time salesperson, then and you're just making $5,000 for a pallet, then you can expect that sort of volume and that sort of reverse engineering you'll have to do. Basically, it depends ultimately on the order size as well.
Okay, super helpful. We're getting close to time. I want to
Sorry,
ask
I mean,
you.
one more thing.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll just stay here. So also you need to understand that salesperson is being used optimized in an efficient way. So I'll actually answer this question in a different way. So this just says 80 cold calls and 8 samples a month. So I'm sure if you have a full-time salesperson, easily they can do 400 cold calls, or maybe more, or 1,000 cold calls, but unfortunately we just don't have that many distributors, but they can do that many, and then half you can have them do some other stuff like, brand building or social media or market work and so on. Yep.
Yep, absolutely. I have a boss who was, because membership and business development is sales essentially also. And whenever somebody tells me no, I'm like, that's just not, that means not right now. Just keep calling. And eventually someone will say yes. Okay, so we are getting close to time. I want to just stop and see if there are any other questions that people have. Use the raise your hand icon or put additional questions in the chat like you have been doing, which has been really fantastic. I see one more in the Q&A. No, wait, there's one more in the Q&A. No, okay. Okay. So while we're waiting to see if there's any more questions, I'm just going to remind some folks of upcoming webinars and resources. And like I said, we'll keep an eye on the chat and see if anybody has any last questions. This webinar and past Discus webinars, which actually include some distributors did a recent webinar, I think it was actually last week, so that's on our website. Those are available at distilledspirits.org/events. It was Park Street Imports and Breakthrough, so we definitely want to do that. Check out that. And just to give you a sense, so next, we've got a couple more webinars coming up because we know that October, November, December, like Sid mentioned earlier, key months for sales. So we're doubling down on relevant topics. On December 2nd, right after Thanksgiving, everyone, we're going to have a webinar on packaging innovations to drive brand growth. And that's going to feature Black Button Distilling, which is a Discus Craft member. They have a strategic sourcing hub platform and service. So they're going to talk about how they've seen packaging innovations to help drive brand growth. We'll see if we can squeeze in another one, another webinar the week of December 9th. And otherwise, we'll take a break and be back early in January, where we already have some webinars scheduled actually for January. I also want to remind everyone that the Discus conference is March 26th through 28th, 2025 here in Washington, D.C. If you're interested, go to distilledspirits.org/events or email membership@distilledspirits.org and we can give you information. I'm actually coordinating a session on it's called Adapting Today, Thriving Tomorrow, Responding to Demographic Shifts and Trends. And so basically it'll be a panel of industry experts that are going to share their insights and practical tips, strategic planning tips on how to adjust to the impacts of the changing economic and policy environment, and also the shifting demographics, the shifting socializing habits, and consumer tastes that we're all seeing that are having impact on our industry. So that's just one of the general sessions of the conference. There's so many more breakout sessions and general sessions. So if you're interested, just let us know. There's also a lot of networking. There's a trade show, optional visits to congressional offices to visit senior staff and maybe a few members of Congress to share how policy does affect our industry's ability to stay in business. So yeah, so I'm gonna let me just check and see one more. Okay, I think, was there one more question in the chat? Okay, here we go. We are at the end of the slide. So that's everything. So Sid, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Appreciate all your insights, practical tips. This is super helpful.
Appreciate it. So sorry I had to cut and be very fast, but they can email me at sid@Beverage Trade Network, as you can see here, sid@beveragetradenetwork.com, and would love to take any questions, and answer properly and thoroughly. So I'll reply you back there. So Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much. Yes, everyone. So like I said before, we'll send everyone the recording, the link, the presentation, Sid's email. And if you have questions specifically about your specific business, please feel free to email him and he'll get back to you. And with that,
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, in advance.
Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks so much, and everyone can disconnect.
All right.